before you say a single word, before you even finish reading this sentence, something in you has already moved. You may not know why you clicked on this video. You may tell yourself it was curiosity, or boredom, or simply because something in the thumbnail caught your eye. But what if it was not that simple? What if the part of you that paused here, the part that felt something pull, already knew something your conscious mind has not yet caught up to? Today, you are going to make one small, quiet choice. You are going to look at 4 rings. And without overthinking, without analyzing, you are going to feel which one calls to you. Not the one you think you should choose. Not the one that seems most practical, or most expensive, or most socially acceptable. The one that pulls at something deeper. The one that your eyes keep returning to even after you tell yourself to look away. That pull is not random. That pull is a message from the part of you that knows far more than you consciously realize. Carl Jung spent his entire life studying one question. Why do we choose what we choose? Not the choices we make with spreadsheets and logic. Not the choices we rehearse before important conversations. But the instinctive, unguarded, half-second choices, the ones that happen before the thinking mind catches up and tries to take control. He believed those choices were not accidents. He believed they were the unconscious mind speaking its truest language. And the unconscious mind, Jung said, does not speak in sentences. It speaks in symbols, in images, in the quiet emotional gravity that pulls you toward one thing and away from another without giving you a reason you can fully explain. A ring is a symbol. It has been a symbol for thousands of years, across cultures, across centuries, across every human civilization that ever tried to express something about identity, commitment, and the invisible nature of the self. So when you look at these 4 rings and one of them calls to you more powerfully than the others, something genuine is happening. Something underneath the surface of your personality is rising toward the light. And what it reveals may surprise you. It may give language to something you have carried quietly for years but never quite found the words for. Jung believed that every woman carries within her a complex and layered inner world. Not the version she shows at work, or at family gatherings, or in the early weeks of a new relationship. Her deeper world. The one shaped by every experience she has ever had. Every love she has felt and not fully expressed. Every strength she has used to protect herself without realizing she was doing it. Every wound she has transformed, sometimes gracefully, sometimes painfully, into something that made her more herself. He called this the psyche. And within the psyche live what he called archetypes, universal patterns of feminine energy that appear again and again across all women, across all times, across all cultures. These archetypes are not rigid boxes. They are living energies. They breathe. They shift. They grow. But most women carry one that is dominant. One that shapes the way she loves, the way she protects herself, the way she longs for connection, and the way she ultimately sees her own worth. The ring you choose today will point toward that dominant energy. Not because the ring is magical, but because your attraction to it, unguarded, instinctive, and honest, is a window directly into your unconscious self. In front of you are 4 rings. Take a breath before you decide. Do not ask yourself which ring is most expensive, or which one your friends might choose, or which one makes the most logical sense for your lifestyle. Simply look, feel, and notice which one pulls. Which one makes something in you go quiet and certain at the same time? Which one, without any reason you can fully defend, feels like yours? Choose only one. Because that single, quiet choice is about to reveal something about your feminine nature that perhaps you have always felt but never fully seen described in words. There is something about you that most people sense before they understand it. A quietness. A stillness. A kind of inner composure that does not announce itself but is somehow impossible to ignore once someone has been close to you long enough to feel it. You did not choose this ring because it was the loudest option in front of you. You chose it because something in its simplicity felt honest, felt familiar, felt like a reflection of something you carry inside yourself that the noisier, more decorated world rarely makes room for. And that tells us something important about who you are. In Jungian psychology, the pearl is one of the most layered symbols in the entire language of the unconscious. Because a pearl does not begin as something beautiful. It begins as something painful. A grain of irritation. A tiny wound inside a soft, living creature. And over time, slowly, patiently, without hurry, that wound is surrounded and transformed into something rare and luminous. That process is you. You are likely a woman who has been shaped by experiences that were not always easy. Experiences that asked more of you than felt fair at the time. And rather than becoming hardened by them, you did something far more difficult. You became deeper. You became more feeling, more perceptive, more quietly powerful than you might have been if life had only ever been gentle with you. People may not always see this immediately. Because your depth does not wear a neon sign. It lives underneath your composure. Underneath your patience. Underneath the calm, measured way you tend to move through the world even when something inside you is carrying real weight. You are someone who feels things profoundly. But you have learned, perhaps too well, how to carry those feelings without letting them spill over into the spaces where you feel unseen or unsafe. This is both your greatest strength and your most honest challenge. Because there is a part of you that longs to be truly known. Not the version of you that holds everything together gracefully. Not the version of you that always finds the right words, or stays calm in the difficult moments, or makes space for everyone else's emotions before attending to your own. The real version. The one that exists in the private hours. The one that sometimes wonders whether the people closest to you truly see how much you feel beneath the surface of your steady exterior. Jung would describe this tension as the space between the persona, the composed, capable face you offer the world, and the anima, the deep, feeling, intuitive interior that contains your truest emotional life. For you, that gap can sometimes feel very wide. Not because you are dishonest, but because you have learned, through experience, that not every space is safe enough to hold the full weight of what you carry inside. Your feminine energy is what Jung might call introverted feeling. It moves inward before it moves outward. It processes before it expresses. It understands before it speaks. This makes you extraordinarily perceptive about other people. You notice things others miss. The slight change in someone's voice, the moment a room shifts emotionally, the unspoken tension beneath a perfectly normal conversation. You read between the lines almost instinctively, because your inner life has trained you to pay attention to what lies beneath the surface of things. But it also means that your own needs can sometimes go unnamed for too long. Because the same sensitivity that makes you so attuned to others can make you hesitant to place your own emotional needs at the center of a conversation. Part of you may worry that doing so would be too much. That asking for what you genuinely need might feel like burden rather than honest communication. This is your shadow whispering. And it is worth listening to. In love, you do not give yourself quickly or carelessly. You watch. You feel. You wait to understand whether the person in front of you is truly capable of the kind of depth and honesty that you require, not as a luxury, but as a basic emotional necessity. You are not looking for someone who dazzles you with grand gestures in the early weeks and then slowly reveals their shallowness as time passes. You are looking for someone who deepens. Someone whose presence reveals more of itself the longer you sit with it. Someone who can hold silence with you comfortably, who notices the small things, who understands that real intimacy is not built in moments of performance but in the quiet, unguarded spaces in between. When you find that person, you love with a rare consistency and loyalty that is becoming genuinely uncommon in this world. But your deepest lesson, the one your unconscious may be asking you to pay attention to right now, is this. You are allowed to need things. You are allowed to say clearly what you require from the people you love, without softening it so much that it disappears entirely. Without apologizing for having a depth of feeling that asks to be met with equal sincerity. The pearl at the center of your ring did not apologize for the process that created it. It simply became what it was always meant to be. And so can you. You felt something when you saw this ring. Not just appreciation. Not just aesthetic recognition. Something warmer than that. Something that moved in your chest before your mind had a chance to form an opinion about it. And that feeling, that immediate, wordless recognition, is exactly where we need to begin. Because you are a woman who lives in feeling. Not carelessly. Not without intelligence. But deeply, fully, and with a kind of emotional intensity that most people around you probably do not entirely understand. Even the ones who love you. Even sometimes, honestly, yourself. The color red has carried meaning across every human culture that has ever existed on this earth. It is the color of the heart. Of passion. Of life moving through the body with urgency and heat. It is the color of love when love is not calm and decorative but real and alive and consuming in the most beautiful possible way. And rose gold, that warm, soft metal that sits somewhere between tenderness and strength, speaks of a femininity that refuses to choose between being powerful and being gentle. That insists, quietly but firmly, on being both at once. That is you. In Jungian psychology, the woman who is drawn to this combination of warmth and intensity carries what he would describe as a strongly activated feeling function. This means that your primary way of understanding the world is not through analysis or logic first. It is through emotional resonance. Through the way things feel against the interior of your experience. You walk into a room and you sense the emotional atmosphere before you have consciously registered a single detail. You meet someone and within moments you have already felt something true about them, something that your rational mind may take weeks to catch up to and confirm. This is not imagination. This is a form of intelligence. A deeply feminine, deeply Jungian form of knowing that our culture does not always honor the way it deserves to be honored. Because it cannot be measured easily, or displayed in a spreadsheet, or defended in a boardroom with charts and citations. But it is real. And it has guided you, often more accurately than you give yourself credit for. You love with your entire self involved. When something matters to you, it matters. There is no halfway. There is no casual emotional distance that you maintain as a safety strategy. When you care about someone, that caring enters your whole inner world and begins to shape the colors of everything else around it. This is one of your most extraordinary qualities. And it is also the place where your deepest vulnerability lives. Because a heart that loves with this kind of wholeness can be hurt with a depth that others, people whose emotional lives are quieter, more contained, more carefully managed, simply cannot fully comprehend. You may have been told, at some point in your life, that you are too much, too sensitive, too intense, too emotional, too invested. Too quick to feel what you feel at the full volume it arrives in. And some part of you, a younger, more unguarded part, may have believed it, may have tried to turn yourself down. To compress the size of your feeling into something more socially comfortable. Something that would not make other people shift in their seats with the discomfort of being near someone who feels so openly, and so deeply. Jung would call this suppression of your authentic emotional nature a wound to the anima, to the living, breathing feminine soul within you. And the cost of that wound is not a small one. When you suppress feeling of this magnitude, it does not disappear. It goes underground. It moves into the shadow, that vast interior space that Jung described as the home of everything we have pushed away from our conscious self-image. Everything we were told was too much, too inconvenient, too vulnerable, too raw to be acceptable. And from the shadow, those suppressed feelings do not stay quiet. They speak in other ways. In sudden waves of emotion that arrive without obvious cause. In relationships that seem to carry an inexplicable intensity from the very beginning. In the ache of feeling deeply understood by someone and then terrified of what that understanding means. In the way certain songs, or certain silences, or certain ordinary moments can open something in you that feels almost too large to contain. This is not dysfunction. This is your emotional depth asking, insisting, to be honored rather than managed. In love, you are searching for something that matches the scale of what you carry inside. You are not interested in relationships that stay permanently on the surface. You do not want a partnership built entirely on routine and practical compatibility, with genuine emotional meeting happening only rarely, in brief windows, when circumstances accidentally allow it. You want to be known. Fully. Honestly. without the performance of having it all together. You want someone who can sit with you in the difficult emotional weather without immediately reaching for an umbrella. Someone who does not flinch from the full complexity of who you are. Someone who understands that your intensity is not instability, it is aliveness. It is the direct evidence of a woman who is genuinely, beautifully, completely present in her own experience. And you want, perhaps more than anything, to feel chosen. Not tolerated. Not accommodated. Not loved despite your depth. Chosen because of it. But here is where your unconscious asks you to look honestly at something. There is a pattern that can emerge in women who carry this particular feminine energy. A pattern that Jung would recognize immediately. Because your capacity to feel is so large, and your longing for genuine connection so sincere, you can sometimes begin to feel the potential of a person before that person has actually demonstrated whether they are capable of meeting you there. You see what someone could be, what a relationship could become. You feel the warmth of a possible future, and you begin, almost without noticing, to love that future as though it were already real. And then, when the actual person reveals themselves to be smaller than the vision your heart had already built around them, the grief is not just for what was lost. It is for what you had already fully, genuinely, emotionally inhabited, even though it never quite existed outside of you. Your lesson is not to feel less. Your lesson is to let reality reveal itself at its own pace before your heart moves in and begins to furnish the rooms. Not because feeling deeply is wrong, but because you deserve to give the full power of your love to someone who has actually shown you, through time, through consistency, through honest presence, that they are capable of receiving it without wasting it. The red stone at the center of your ring does not burn quietly. It declares itself. It says, I am here. I am real. I am not going to pretend to be smaller than I am just to make this easier for you. That is your feminine energy speaking its most honest truth. Vivid, warm, unashamed of its own depth. And perhaps the most important thing this ring reveals is not just who you are today. It is who you are becoming as you learn, slowly, courageously, and on your own terms, to stop apologizing for the size of what you feel. And to start trusting that somewhere, that size is not too much. It is exactly enough. You did not choose this ring because it was pretty. You chose it because it was true. Something in its darkness felt honest to you in a way that the softer, brighter options did not. Something in its sharp, unapologetic lines felt more like a reflection of your actual interior landscape than anything warmer or more decorative could have offered. And that instinct, that pull toward depth over decoration, toward truth over prettiness, tells us something very significant about the kind of woman you are. You are not here to be comfortable for other people. You never really were. In Jungian psychology, black is the color most directly associated with the shadow, that vast, largely unexplored interior territory that contains everything the conscious self has not yet fully integrated. Everything that has been pushed below the surface. Everything that society, family, relationships, and experience taught you to keep out of sight. But here is what most people misunderstand about the shadow. They hear the word and they think darkness. Danger. Something to be afraid of or ashamed of. Jung meant something far more complex and far more interesting than that. He meant that the shadow contains not only the parts of ourselves we have suppressed out of shame or fear, but also the parts we have suppressed because they were simply too powerful for the spaces we were placed in. Too perceptive. Too unwilling to perform. Too honest. Too knowing. Too much of everything that the small, frightened world around us did not know how to hold without feeling threatened. For many women who choose this ring, the shadow does not contain weakness. It contains strength that was never given permission to fully exist in the open. You are a woman with a remarkable interior life. And by that, I do not mean simply that you think deeply, though you do. I mean that you have an entire world living inside you that most of the people in your daily life have probably never been granted real access to. Not because you are secretive for its own sake, but because you learned through experience, sometimes through painful experience, that not every person who requests entry into your inner world actually has the capacity to honor what they find there. So you became selective, careful, watchful, patient in a way that can sometimes be mistaken for coldness by people who have not yet understood that what they are actually encountering is discernment. You do not open easily. But when you do, when someone has genuinely earned the right to stand inside the full reality of who you are, what they discover there is not darkness in the frightening sense. It is depth in the most rare and extraordinary sense. There is something almost architectural about the way you have constructed your interior world. It has structure. It has levels. It has rooms that only certain people ever see, and rooms that perhaps even you have not fully explored yet. Jung would say that this layered quality of your personality is the direct result of a psyche that has been doing serious inner work, whether consciously or not, for a very long time. You have been paying attention, not just to the world around you, though you observe that with startling accuracy, but to yourself, to the patterns that repeat in your life, to the emotional responses that arrive in you before your thinking mind has had a chance to explain them, to the quiet knowing that sits beneath the surface of your daily experience like bedrock beneath moving water. This self-awareness is one of your most significant gifts. But it also carries its own particular weight.